Difficult to follow that account of the impact, the powerful impact between the machine and the body. I'm going to talk about a much more seductive impact between the machine and the body, but one which might also have shattering consequences. Before I begin, I'd like to just thank everyone at this very inspiring institution. I could, in some ways, talk for 30 minutes about the ways in which, if there is a trauma of the technosphere, this institution is somehow the therapy. But I will just content myself by thanking everyone here. It's always an honor to deal with the amazing intellectual and personal hospitality of the House of World Cultures. So thank you. This evening I'd like to offer you 4 small thought vignettes, all of which say something about the human nervous system when it's brought into contact with the contemporary technosphere. I'm going to talk about the technosphere itself as a giant machine, but not just one machine, the totally connected machine of all machines, which I can also call the global techno market. This is the universal machine made up of a vast number of organic and inorganic components, which are interconnected by 2 twin networks, technological and commercial, which are increasingly indistinguishable. In a necessarily incomplete fashion, my 4 vignettes will try to give a sense of a process that's been in motion for much of the 100 years of now, and that has now reached a certain stage of perfection with the advancement of the internet, which is to say the progressive absorption of individual human energy flows into the far vaster currents of the universal machine. And I'll suggest that the techno market is powered in this era when data mining is the only real product of several of the world's most valuable companies, by energies drawn from deep inside the human organism. And I'll try to argue that this has the power to dramatically rewire our own libidinal circuitry. Finally, since we're involved tonight in a trauma investigation, I'll ask if any of this constitutes a trauma. There's no doubt that the takeover of other cosmologies and sensualities by the logic at the machine of all machines leaves us with a grief that is sometimes overwhelming. But the human nervous system also has a dazzling flexibility in its ability to fuse with machines, and perhaps there really is no traumatic rupture at all. So the image you've just seen from the Matrix in which the machine of all machines is powered by the individual cells, batteries of human bodies, which are stacked up in their millions to supply the energy required, is an image that I want you to keep in your heads. The first vignette, then. Since we're in Berlin, and since we're inaugurating a project called 100 Years of Now, I'd like to begin by describing a childhood memory of a famous Berliner that dates from exactly 100 years ago. The formidable reputation of Herbert von Karajan, chief conductor of the Berlin Philharmonic from 1955 until shortly before his death in 1989, rests to a great extent on his ability to take a 19th century machine, the symphony orchestra, and to build onto it all the valves and ports by which it could be integrated into that great machine of machines of which we are all now a part, the global techno market. He achieved this, first of all, by bringing an unprecedented level of musical perfection to the orchestra machine itself, combining his 100 musicians into performances so lusciously smooth that some listeners felt he had killed the raw energy of that orchestras were famous for in the previous era. But Karajan's innovation went far beyond the concert hall. His tirelessly entrepreneurial management of the orchestra involved him plugging its antique machine into the great expanding machines of his own era, which was the beginning of our own. There was the recording machine, for Karajan was famously fanatical about recording, and he was the first to embrace new recording technologies such as stereo and digital, and he made far more recordings than any other conductor. The marketing machine. Karajan, probably the most photographed of all conductors, was a superb promoter of his orchestra, taking it on tours all over the world, producing an unprecedented number of films of its performances, and turning it into what we might call a global brand. The money machine. Karajan developed new corporate structures and revenue models for his orchestra, gave musicians the options to own shares in recording revenues, and found ways to charge unprecedented fees for his own appearances and those of the orchestra. Karajan's career extended well into the era of Thatcher and Reagan. And in many ways, he is one of those many pioneers who helped to build the contemporary world machine, doing for the Berlin Philharmonic something similar to what Alex Ferguson did for Manchester United. And the two organizations, in fact, were almost exactly the same age, founded in 1882 and 1878, respectively, enabling through a spectacular rearrangement of financial and media energies a confined local activity to circulate throughout global space. Where did this techno-market visionary draw his inspiration from? Late in life, Karajan described the moment at which, in his own estimation, his life as a musician began. It happened during a walk he took in the Grundlsee with his father and brother when he was 6 years old. This dates the memory to 1914, or 101 years ago. It was spring, and so a few months before the outbreak of World War I. Walking in the snow-covered mountains, young Herbert and his uncle and his father came upon a group of carnival musicians, or Flinseln, of whom one was playing the violin. They stopped on the mountainside to listen to the violinist. As the music continued, they began to hear on every side the low sound of approaching drums, and slowly there appeared several bands of Trommelweiber, men dressed as women, beating drums to chase away the winter. The shifting, overlapping, clashing sounds of all these groups of people thrilled the young Karajan, who later dreamed of commanding just such energies with his baton. This memory must have drawn part of its power from the great destruction that descended on that world immediately afterwards. The players Karajan saw that day would have gone off soon after to be workers in an industrial war, which did great violence to the older cosmologies. To quote Walter Benjamin, a generation that had gone to school on a horse-drawn streetcar now stood under the open sky in a countryside in which nothing remained unchanged but the clouds. And beneath these clouds, in a force field of destructive torrents and explosion, was the tiny, fragile human body. By placing this memory at the beginning of his musical life, Karajan, the machine devotee, asserted his connection to an entirely different universe, one in which the energies of nature and music circulated in ways that the later machine world would make obsolete. But why should a machine builder insist on his own pastoral, pre-machinic origins? It would seem paradoxical, except that this pathos of that which we ourselves destroy is a basic structure of high modernity. Industrial culture has always found great romance and spiritual plenitude in the dying energies of its own victims. We see it in Gauguin, we see it in Mahler, we see it in America, which built such a romance with its native population once it had wiped it out. In this way, modernity mines ancient spiritual accumulations, just as industrial societies have mined ancient deposits of carbon fuel. Deep down, the machine builder is not always convinced by his own optimism. As he turns the world further into a machine, his own sources of inspiration are killed, and he must look always further and further away for his sustenance. In the meantime, the sensual landscape that produced him is destroyed, and the world is no longer capable of that fundamental fertility. Even as he profits from the machine, he fears it might take over entirely, not only the external world, but also his own interiority. He reassures himself as he goes to sleep by telling fairy tales that really happened, that once he was a child, and he wandered with nothing around him except vast, unbroken nature, and his ecstasy was reflected back to him as music. Sorry, this is overtaking me here. So I just want you to think, the images are a kind of image track, like a soundtrack, and I want you to think, as the remainder of the presentation goes on, about the mountains and hills that appear in these images, and the ways in which, in some ways, mountains and hills always seem to come back as the compensation for the machine, for the technosphere, as if the way out of the technosphere is always up, for reasons that we can think about afterwards. So, then the second movement. For many other people, the prospect of being taken over by machines is far more real than it was for Karajan. Conducting an orchestra is, even now, one of those activities that's most impossible for machines to replicate. Contrary to most other abilities, the mastery of complex bodily fields, such as conducting, but also other things, sports, acting, and other musical activities, is rising in financial value precisely because it defies the general logic of the world, the routinization of human function. These are some of the 100 best-paid celebrities of 2015 who all have various kinds of unique bodily function which has great financial value. But for the majority of people who do not have such unique and irreproducible skills to offer to the global marketplace, the possibility that machines might take over their labor puts them in a much darker and more dangerously intimate relationship to the expanding machine. This includes, of course, the once secure professional classes, many of whom have, in the last generation, moved into the field of computing because they know that for a while they can earn good money writing the software that ensures the redundancy of their class. But this too will expire, since it is certain that computers will soon be able to write better code than human beings. Computer code at that point will evolve autonomously, and it will ultimately escape the ability of human beings to understand it. A great number of people in the world today are therefore faced with what we can call, in the technical sense, proletarianization, and the undercutting by machines of the economic value of their skills is only the first part of this. Equally important is the establishment of a value equivalence between themselves and machines. This, of course, was fundamental to the outrage that erupted in the machine-breaking movements in England and France at the turn of the 19th century. It was not so much that the machine appeared to possess human attributes. No, it was rather that the farmer, craftsman, or soldier now possessed no human excess that could differentiate him or her from a machine. The horror inspired by the increasing power and intelligence of machines is not so much the machines are becoming human, no, it is that the human itself is clearly susceptible to being turned into a machine. We know that from the philosopher Bernhard Stiegler why human beings are particularly vulnerable to this fear. For the very birth of the human species is brought about from the accommodation of the biological organism with an inorganic prosthesis, that of language. Language, observes Stiegler, comes into human life at the same time as the first hammer, and for him the species is defined by its dependence on what he called technics. The threat of machines to labor power is all the more existential then, for the fact that machines are not and have never been remote beings. Our organism is built to merge with them, reorganize itself around them, and love them. It has, as the contemporary pop-sci language goes, no boundaries. It is built to be taken over by the machine, And if human beings have sometimes gone out to break machines on a mass industrial scale, they have done so not only because of any potential embedded in the machine, but because of what they have recognized in themselves, their own near infinite receptivity to the seduction of machines. So Hollywood usually breaks out of the machine world with romance and mountains. And we're going to see it again in a minute. And it's the erotic connection of human beings that I'll come to, that becomes the dominant theme later on. So movement 3. The current stage of elaboration of the techno market brings this human receptivity to the machine into sharp relief with what I shall call techno-sex. That is to say, the eroticization of the apparatus of the techno market itself, and the opening up of channels by which human beings may actually have sex with the techno market. Internet pornography is the most widespread and conspicuous of these channels. As I've just gestured towards, in Hollywood's presentation of dystopian futures where the entire world has been taken over by machines, and of course these dystopian futures are supposed to make us believe that the entire world has in reality not been taken over by machines. One thing remains miraculously unaffected by the general occupation: the erotic, romantic attraction of human beings for each other. And this is the sort of miraculous part of our examination of the techno market or of technology, that somehow human interiority disobeys the rules of the rest of the universe. In our real-world techno market, however, human sexuality shows itself to be every bit as changeable as the rest of capitalism. Human beings, it turns out, do not only like having sex with each other, they can also learn to like having sex with machines. And at this time, our time, when the ideology of the global techno market is fully in crisis, the machine of all machines has, as if by coincidence, dropped its pants and asked us, if we cannot believe in it, to have sex with it. Because, as we well know, capitalism does not demand that we agree with it, only that we desire it. And this video by Matthew Barney accompanies much of the rest of the presentation. Most commentary on internet pornography concerns the question, does it offer a positive or negative representation of human sex? And it assumes that its ultimate significance is its feedback into human erotic relations. But this is to give undue importance to the message, when here the medium is all. Users of internet pornography are not consuming secondary representations of real sex. They are not substituting for real sex. They are having real sex with the global technological apparatus. Internet pornography allows the human to plug into the machine of all machines in a new way and engenders a novel erotic function in the human organism. Every kind of real-world sex act is represented in the field of internet pornography, and so it is natural for users to believe that this field is only an extension of their previous erotic system. But the erotic imagery of internet pornography is only the fantasy interface between the machine and the human. For the user, the object of desire is not other humans, but the techno market itself, precisely because of its infinite image-making power. Users are invited to have sex, not with another human being, nor even with a photograph or a video showing a human being, but with the universal database in which all these things are housed. With the database by which the internet pretends to mimic our fantasy life, thereby restructuring our fantasy life as database. For internet porn, just like any shopping site, is organized with drop-down menus, search boxes, and user ratings, and that is precisely the source of its erotic appeal. In the world of sex with machines, technological attributes are erotic attributes, as we see in the reviews of fucking machines sold on Amazon.com. A woman asks of previous purchasers of such a machine, "Is there an Android app so I can control it from my phone?" It is clear that such questions are not only practical. The erotic appeal, too, of the fucking machine rests on its level of integration into the contemporary Internet of Things. What generates the intensity of this new rearrangement of human erotic currents? As we know from Marcuse, the seemingly atavistic energies that have arisen within capitalist societies since the Second World War to break the stranglehold of what we might call the bourgeois superego, the progressive rebellion against the institutions of the family and the state, for instance, have consistently served to intensify the neural power of capitalism itself. This was, anyway, the explicit ideological project of the neoliberal era. Thatcher and Reagan sought to dismantle all other relationships in favor of one single relationship, the relationship with the market. And that relationship has become more and more fundamental in our lives since, especially as the market has merged entirely with computing power, inaugurating a world managed and administered by algorithms. This has perfected the market universe and integrated it fully with our inner world, tapping human libidinal energy far closer to its source than was previously possible, and simultaneously cutting off users from alternative sensualities, cosmologies, and rhythms of time. It is this primary relationship with the global techno-market and the libidinal energies that course through it which is expressed through techno-sex. Techno-sex belongs to the era of social media and big data, when the idea that the machine of machines is powered by human life energy becomes entirely literal and explicit and no longer a metaphor. Social media, after all, is a universal mechanism for capturing and circulating human libidinal jolts. They are instantly gratifying because we are able to see the vast machine instantly rearranging itself around every micro-life event we feed it. But the fact that we give something of ourselves away in the process is apparent to us all, which is one of the reasons for the remorse, which is also an inherent part of the social media universe. To universal search engines, we surrendered only our ability to remember. To social media, we surrender our ability to generate our own life force, which is why so many of us are dependent now on the clicks and chirrups by which the machine of machines reports back to us on our lives, which we no longer possess for ourselves. It is natural that we be filled with awe at a machine that can steal such stupendous energies for itself and use them to such dramatic effect. Techno-sex is a form of erotic worship of that stupendous storehouse of libidinal energy, the techno-market, that has been inflated to cosmic proportions by our own energies. On the fuel of those energies, it now burns like a vast, bright sun. In the technosphere, techno-sex is ritualized sun worship. But this is an obscene god, which is why techno-sex, too, is widely accompanied by remorse. There is no higher purpose to Facebook. It does not represent a vision of nature or mankind to which we would, in normal circumstances, willingly sacrifice our life energy. The dark genius of social media is apparent to all of us from the outset, that the energies immanent in our friendships, our love affairs, our collegial debates can all be converted into vast revenues in which we have no share. Facebook is a savage deity standing for pure monopolistic acquisitiveness, and it introduces a dreary, nihilistic final stage into what Marcuse called the automization of the superego. The old bourgeois institutions of higher order and conscience, most notably the democratic state, which spoke the language of lofty ideals and addressed individuals as abstractions without regard to race, sex, religion, wealth, or status, have been replaced by the global techno-market, which in precisely the opposite way addresses individuals in all their unique details and speaks the language of devastating appetites. In the wake of Deleuze, we are forced to ask not what desire seeks, but what it produces. Techno-sex produces and continually inflates its own stupendous object of desire, the ever more supreme techno-market. Just as with every new friendship, the monopolistic capital of Facebook is expanded, with every new techno-orgasm, the techno-market expands its absolute hold over our libidinal energy. There is nothing grandiose about this outcome, and we know it well. Whereas the dream life of high-minded state systems was made up of surrealism and cruelty, the dream life of the diabolical techno-market is characterized by neurotic order and subjection. Though we have built a pleasure zone for ourselves within this lugubrious universe, our pleasure only supplies more power by which the techno-market may diminish us. Excuse me. What does all this mean, and what has it turned us into? Most particularly, given the context of this evening's investigation, does it constitute any kind of trauma? At some very obvious level, human beings do not seem to be traumatized by the new intensity of their contact with machines. Quite the reverse. In fact, humans seem to welcome the company that machines provide us now that they are able to address us at the levels of friendship and sex. Through the staggering scale of big data, human beings have now, for the first time, been confronted with that long-imagined singularity, computers addressing us with an intelligence that seems rather like our own. We are suddenly aware of what was always known but never experienced, that computer intelligence is developing 10 million times faster than our own, and that we must at some point surrender our position as the most sophisticated beings on this planet. One thing that has emerged with this realization is that human beings have abandoned many of their objections to becoming machines. With machines triumphant, the idea of becoming machine has begun to seem not abject but grandiose. Hollywood has begun to present the human being become machine not as horror but as lyricism, which is the point of my research notes on the recent movie Inside Out, a Disney animation for children. In this film, the young heroine is controlled by an inner machine. So all these pictures of databases and consoles are happening. This is all within the head of the main character. The young heroine is controlled by an inner machine, a combination of a corporate boardroom and a vast computer. But she is not an uncanny or horrifying character, as one would expect from the previous conventions of Hollywood. She is, in fact, the quintessential normal American girl. Her technological engine does not make her less human. It is this, in fact, which manages her chaotic feelings and allows her to integrate humanely with the changing world around her. At a time when so many people have, in their working lives, become merely the organic prosthesis to a machine brain, working in call centers where they say what a computer tells them to say, or driving a taxi while listening to orders from a computer, the gradual recodification of the human essence as inherently machine brings to this process, once thought of as degrading, a more uplifting counter-narrative. The intervention of upstart machines into economic life 2 centuries ago led human beings to wish to destroy them. Now that machines are so much more dominant, human beings wish to make love to them. And one of the reasons must be because we are now fully prepared to join the world of machines. Perhaps waning humanity, cognizant of machines' triumphant power, makes love to them in order to become them, in order to shore up its own fragility with the steely ascendancy of the winning side. But this is clearly not the only story. The uprooting of human beings over a long period of time from all relations that are not machine relations has clearly led to a whole range of new neurotic tics and nostalgic addictions, which could indeed be evidence for trauma. The enormous explosion of discourse about an aestheticization of food, for instance, for food is one of those sensual experiences that cannot be delivered through the screen, and therefore takes on fetishistic importance in the universe I've described. In every rich country, chefs and dietitians have suddenly joined the ranks of celebrities. For like orchestral conductors or tennis players, they represent sensual possibilities of the body which appear even more valuable in the light of the fact that so much of life now happens through glass. Food has become a key arena for human beings to express their anxieties about the techno market and their desire to reconnect to previous sensualities. I believe that the total absorption of human life energy into the technosphere is a collective trauma, one which began to affect us 2 centuries ago and whose ongoing effects we can discern within ourselves. But I also think that this trauma can never be directly observed, nor even really talked about, which is why it will always fail to be anything more than a speculation. The sociologist Jeffrey Alexander has suggested that even such definitive events as the genocide of the European Jews only became a collective trauma when it was narrated as such. By this measure, our loss of pre-machine relations cannot be a trauma because it cannot be narrated. Sometimes we hear people saying, for instance, "I wish I could have my pre-internet brain back." But in fact, there is no serious way to articulate such thoughts, which are unheimlich. They have no home in our onward rushing time. Even in our own head, such thoughts are foggy and not completely believable. But anyone who tries seriously to assert that the expanding power of machines should be arrested or turned back is assumed to be a ridiculous nostalgic or simply mad, because this line of thought has been cut off long ago. As our organisms are ever more perfectly wired into the machine of all machines, we will see even more perverse and paradoxical outcomes in our own rebellious nervous systems, outcomes that will make the silhouette of our trauma more clear to us. But ultimately, this is a trauma we will never see directly. It has no form and no voice, precisely because the language with which we might express it is one of the casualties of the trauma itself. All we are left with is fantasies of worlds past, of medieval sensualities once rampant in the Alps, for instance, whose shattering emotional power over us we can never really explain. Thank you.